We just drove down this random place. We went to Santiago de Cuba, and Carnival was happening, and this big parade, and it was awesome. And then we like all night drove down this scary road on the side of like the very bottom end of Cuba, and it's all in the episode. But all that, and then went up to the command center, which I think we're still the first people that filmed there. That's where like the revolution was taking place, the headquarters of the revolution, and we filmed there. And even that was interesting because I'm sort of, there was a guide for that specific bit, but I'm sort of like running around with him and trying to keep him distracted. And he's like, "Where'd your friends go? They're filming this and that." And I'm like, "Oh, they're probably just smoking a cigar or something. They're in Cuba, they're having a good time." But there are times where, but yeah, a lot of the show relies on it did rely a lot on contract deals with airlines and with tourism companies and stuff. So there'd be a lot of times when we get free flights somewhere or we get a hotel somewhere. But I think as we started to realize that, these tourism companies, they want you to shoot a certain thing in the country. They don't want you to shoot a broken down car or, oh, I got a cut, now it's getting infected and I can't find a hospital. They don't want to show that real stuff that could happen. So we started sort of, I don't know, phasing that out a little bit as much as we could.
It's still
and I was just, yeah, I was just saying, I was meeting up with Anne before this, and I was just saying, when we shot in Australia, we had the full support of the Australian Tourism Board, but they were such a pain in the ass that I remember telling them at one point, the head of the tourism board, that North Korea was an easier country to deal with, and that these guys are a nightmare, and that pissed them off a lot. So, and they haven't seen the episode since. So. But yeah, I guess question.
As a producer, what are some of the major challenges you face?
Okay, what are the major challenges as being a producer? All the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So the managing the budget and schedule, and when you get the money from the broadcaster, they don't just pay you all at once. So they'll pay you, say, 30% when you sign a contract, 20% when you start shooting, 20% when you deliver your first 6 episodes, 20% when you deliver the next 6. So it comes in drawdowns and stages. And the problem is that you also have tax credits, which come like a year after you finish shooting, right? So the cash flow of it is really tricky. So you don't want to basically, you can cash flow it. There are ways to do it, but it's really tricky to just keep paying people and just to keep the money going. So interim financing is a big tricky thing. So just knowing the ins and outs of tax credits, and really, when I left Sheridan, I just print out all the information I could find on tax credits and read it at night, in bed, really geeky stuff, right? But that's just the way I learned it, and then just doing it on my first production and suffering through it, and asking people for advice here and there as much as I could. But learning about that kind of thing is really the important part as well. I think being involved on a story element as well, and making sure that the people who are shooting it and hosting and directing and all that have exactly what they need to shoot it, do the best job they can, to get as much money on screen, but to also maintain the back end of things. So to make sure that legally everyone's covered, that you got all your contracts signed, because you're gonna have to go through your lawyer to get your errors and emissions insurance. You're gonna have to go to them to get your crew contracts, templates, and all that stuff. So music contracts with the composers, everything, right? So there's really a whole world of paperwork that goes along with doing a show like this. And also I was doing all the accounting on the show too, so it's all that. No producer would do the accounting.
Never again.
Yeah, I've said never again the last 5 projects, but that's really a lot of the challenges. The actual challenges in terms of getting these episodes going. Sometimes we were planning on shooting, say, Yemen. At one point we had Yemen and Iran, right? And then all of a sudden, there was a major riot in Iran, and then Yemen was all of a sudden Al Qaeda moved over to Yemen that week or something, and we were supposed to, and
shut the borders to foreign journalists.
yeah, borders were shut. Foreign journalists were getting arrested or getting kidnapped there. So we're okay, bad time to go there. And so that's some of the real challenges. But then I think also being with these guys sometimes for some of these shoots,
That's a challenge.
sometimes having to jump off the cliff with them or climb the volcano is also very challenging. Yeah.
You guys have been to a lot of remote places. I was wondering, how did you do data management, battery power,
part's maybe harder. On departures, again, like everybody who would be traveling would carry one hard drive, so there'd be like, everything was shot to P2 cards, so at the end of every day, like if I was with them, essentially it'd be my job, but we all kind of pitched in or whatever to dump all the cards and to back them up 2 or 3 times to every drive, and would always keep one drive back at the hotel, one drive in the car, one drive in our backpack. So keeping everything sort of separate and safe from one another was like key. And batteries, I mean, the camera didn't take up a lot, so every night it would be like unpack everything, set up a massive charging station, charge everything, offload everything, check it, pack it up, erase the cards. We made sure we had at least a day's worth of cards. But there were times like when we did an episode in Papua New Guinea, we did 4 days going down the Sepik River, and we had no electricity at all, and we knew that going in. So we, I think at the time we had like 8 batteries or 10 batteries or something, like pretty big ones. They would last most of the day on the camera, but if we use the lights, then it would drain it pretty quick. So just really being careful. And again, we had to back up everything. So in that episode, in that case, we only backed up to like the LaCie drives that we could plug into a laptop, which only had limited, you know, we only had 2 batteries in a laptop too. But that's basically what we had. We had one laptop, we had those little cheesy dongle things that you have to plug the P2 in. We had a couple of drives, a couple of batteries for the laptop. And then we had a couple, like a handful of LaCie drives, and then a handful of just like regular like 1 terabyte drives that everything we backed up to. And every night just, you know, redundancies to make sure that. And thankfully over the course of the whole show, we only lost a couple things. I think one was like a cockfight in Ecuador, and the other thing was a volcano in Antarctica. Like a polar bear died into a volcano in Antarctica. So, and then we lost like the elephant seals. We got that back. So that's departures. But again, we had such a small amount of gear. We almost fit on this table, like maybe this high. But descending is kind of another thing. So.
Just to further what Steve was saying about departures, I remember it was, again, being able to stay as slim as possible. And in Iceland, we were in a lava tube, which is basically like a tunnel that the lava carves through the rock. And we were probably the better part of a mile down into a lava tube, and I remember like water's dripping everywhere and everything. We were full, all the cards were full, and I remember getting under a garbage bag in this lava tube to protect the laptop from the dripping water and everything, and using like our little pen lights to, you know, get the laptop going and do, you know, dump the footage off to a hard drive in a lava tube. And that was just sort of like one of those crazy places. It's like, wow, look what we're doing right now just to shoot a show. But you do whatever you can and try to, you know, like on the Sepik River, trying to manage the batteries in the P2 space like money. You know how long you've got. We know what we're getting into, that we're going to be 7 days without power. So, you know, we literally at times have to tell Andre to just shut it down, you know, and save it, because, you know, once, and it's easier too, especially in a lot of these hot countries. Through midday, the light's washed out and it's garbage anyway. And so unless something really magic is happening with the locals or an animal or whatever, you usually just make up miles during that time and save the battery and the memory for, you know, when magic hour hits and everything. With descending, I'll try to just go quickly, but with descending now with so much more equipment, underwater lighting, underwater communications that have to be charged, underwater lights for the divers that have to be charged, camera batteries for the red, and the red batteries are obviously a lot bigger. It's everything about descending is a much bigger beast. And now we're constantly having to rent and find generators wherever we go. When we were in New Zealand, we rented 2 cars. We bought a generator when we got to Christchurch. We used it for the 3 weeks that we were filming there, and then we put it in like the want ads basically the last couple of days before we were leaving, and we sold it, and we lost, I think, $150 on it. So we rented a generator for $150 for 3 weeks. So it was a much better way of doing things. And Australia, you know, we bought a car and, well, gave it away. We didn't sell it at the end, but you just try to make do with what you can. But for now, with descending, we really can't go without power, even a day out. And again, that's the limitations of shooting red. As far as data management goes, we take about 6 to 8 terabytes of hard drive into the field, so we have redundancy. And every night Steve Balog, another Steve, on the team is basically up all night just dumping footage and then making a redundancy of that footage. So it's an all day, all night kind of job to keep it going for sure.
Do you guys have any other questions, or, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just, before we go, like, being part ownership of the company and all that sort of stuff, obviously, between myself and Andre, and Steve and Jesse, we were sort of the four heads that kind of came together and hashed out where we wanted to go, and how we were going to do that. And so as soon as we would start to decide on places, I would just start reading up on the internet about them and getting all of the Wikipedia notes, everything that I could kind of absorb, and then I would always buy The Lonely Planet for that country that we were going to, and the entire plane ride there I would just read The Lonely Planet, study up and learn about things and everything else, and then I could regurgitate a lot of that. And then a lot of it too, you're just learning from people that you run into, and easy enough to talk about. So.
And if it comes down to planes, then that's just me, he's known forever. We were driving down the 401 once, and it was like middle of the night, and Scott's like, oh, that's a so-and-so. It's just two little dots, like maybe 50 kilometers away. Yeah.
What were the first jobs you had?
The first jobs we had when we graduated. My first job, I was still like, there was a couple projects I shot after I finished media arts. One of my partners, he came back, he was in skate. He came back for another year and did skate again, basically. And through that, we shot two films. One was called System of Units, which is a sci-fi film, and one was the Amal short, which became Amal the feature. And he shot that in India in 2003, I think. And so we got like jobs, but we were also promoting this. We were going to different film festivals and markets and stuff, and like. We went to Cannes, we went to the Short Film Corner at Cannes, went to Palm Springs Short Film Festival, worldwide here, TIFF. Like, we were just going around and learning the markets, and also like selling our shows as well, and learning, you know, you can make money off your shorts, even the ones you shoot at Sheridan. You know, we sold to like Space and CBC, Canadian Reflections and things like that. So, and France 3 and whatever. But we were like kind of learning that system, but for me anyway, I was working in post-production, so I was a post-PA on a couple shows. One was called Witchblade, which was a Warner Brothers show at the time. And then another one was one called, then I was a post-coordinator on a show called Strange Days of Blake Holding High and Naturally Sadie. A couple like Disney shows or whatever. And then I was post-supervising on this like 1 hour crazy documentary about the first Olympic Games, all visual effects, all HD, and it was like a wacky project. So I was sort of like in the post world for a long time until, but also working on short films. So I also produced 2 films after Sheridan as well that we also like took around to the festivals and markets and that, and just learned sort of the ins and outs and got to know people in the industry and get to trust. And then once Amal the short was doing really well at the festivals and winning awards and people were relating to it really well, that's how we said, you know what, let's turn this into a feature film. And then we took that idea. We pitched it at the TIFF Pitch This competition, which happens during the Toronto Film Fest, and we won, and we got $10,000, which was like winning the lottery. And we just went out to India, and we were like hanging out at this, for 2.5 weeks, we were basically hanging out at this massive wedding. It was the biggest Indian wedding of the decade at the time. Bill Clinton was there, we were like pitching the film to him, we were pitching the film to all these billionaires, and they were like, okay, it sounds great, but what's your budget? We're like, $1 million, and they're like, see you later. Like they were just like, we weren't even close to their realm, right? We're just a bunch of, you know, punks just like pitching this dream project, and they're like, man, I'm like the 5th richest man on earth, what do I need from you? So, but it was fun, because we got like everything set up, we got all of our locations and stuff, and eventually that film, after so many, you know, a couple more years,